This is Now What? Life After Redundancy. When your job disappears, but you don't. Hello. I'm Stevie, and you're joining me on my journey through and hopefully past redundancy, where I'm regularly asking myself the question, now what? And if you've currently got about 12 tabs open and 3 of them are job specifications you're not sure you're even qualified for, and one of them's been quietly auto-playing a 2-minute meet the team video you never asked for, then you're exactly who this show is for. This podcast is for anyone currently living in the strange stretch between one job and whatever is next, where you're a fully capable adult with a CV that reads perfectly well on paper, and your brain still finds time to invent brand new worries at middle of the night, like it's on commission. Each episode is part practical, part perspective, part pep talk without any weird, cringy slogans. And today, I want to start with an image, because I think it's going to explain the episode better than I can by just describing it. Picture your normal working life as a juggling act. Nothing dramatic, you're not in a clown costume or anything, but it's just the ordinary stuff that's usually circling around at any given time. The job itself, obviously, whatever you've got going on at home, the admin no one else ever sees, and somewhere in there, the quiet, slightly pathetic habit of getting half an episode ahead of the show you're meant to be watching with your partner, and then having to fake genuine shock at the twist that evening like you didn't already know. Most days you keep all of that moving well enough that nobody watching would guess it takes any effort at all. But then redundancy turns up, and here's the thing about redundancy, it doesn't just hand you one more ball to fold into that juggling rotation, it throws you a knife. You're still doing the same act, same rhythm you've built up over years, except now one bad catch could actually cost you something. Now, there are some people who take that knife beautifully. They barely break stride, they weave it straight into their pattern like it was always meant to be there. And then there is the rest of us who catch it by the blade a couple of times before working out how to hold the thing properly. I include myself firmly in that second category, hence the occasional plaster. Now today's guest was juggling several of those at once for the best part of a year before one more turned up right when he thought he'd finally got them all under control. But before we get into any of that, 3 quick things. If you find this show useful, a rating or review truly helps other people find it. And if you want somewhere to actually talk this stuff through with people going through the same thing, that's what the invisible queue's for. There's a link in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with the show directly, suggest a theme or a topic, you can reach out at thenowwhat.co.uk. Right then, let's get into it. So my guest today is Dan Roberts. Dan spent about 20 years working in data, starting out as a fraud investigator before discovering that building the database behind the job was the bit he actually loved. He landed at a field marketing agency 13 years ago and stayed as it grew up around him. Outside of work, he and his wife grow their own food on a plot, and to the point by his own account where they barely go anywhere and just get people to come to them instead. Dan's redundancy didn't arrive on its own. It arrived at the end of a year that had already thrown him more than most people get in 5, and then, almost as a parting gift, threw one more. Here's my conversation with Dan. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. It's fantastic to have you here. Just before we kick off, it'd be great just to start with you, who you are and what's your career looked like up until this point.
Well, I'm Dan. Up to really, I would say 2024, 25. I've been working in data for about 20 odd years. I started off as a fraud investigator back in 2007. Actually, before that, my task was to build a database to store all the cases on, which I've never done before. And I found I actually enjoyed that bit far more than the fraud bit. So then I moved on to different companies, just getting more experience. Started right at the very bottom and eventually got an opportunity with a company who were a field marketing agency. which if you're not familiar with, they get paid by companies to go into shops and make sure their product is on the shelf where they want it. And I got a job there to sort out their locations database. And that's where I've been for kind of the last 13 years. It expanded, the role expanded and so on, but it was a really, really great company to actually work for. Certainly when they were very small, there was all sorts of kind of madcap antics they used to get up to. Very relaxed and then people-centric.
Brilliant. And what does the rest of your life look like outside of work?
My wife and I had long been into growing our own food. And before where we are now, we lived in Surrey and we had an allotment. And we found that it was a real trouble driving 7 miles just to pick a few kind of bits of fruit and stuff. So we had a long-term plan to go out to the countryside and have our plot within our house. Eventually, the opportunity came for us to move out to Herefordshire, which is what we did in 2020. And that's kind of what we do, really. We do say to people, how can you have all this time to garden and stuff? Well, we don't go out. We literally do not go out. We don't do anything else. We just do things outside. So we're very much outdoors people. What we counter that by we invite people over to enjoy the garden with us. So we'd be very sociable, but in that kind of respect.
That makes sense. And obviously, the theme of the podcast is all about redundancy, and I'm keen to understand your kind of redundancy journey. But just slightly before your own redundancy journey, what was going on in your life around that time, and how did that kind of journey begin for you?
Well, yeah, it was 2025. Really, I mean, the seeds were sown in 2024. My wife had a change of management at her company, and that there was something obviously not mismatched there. It wasn't working, and at the start of 2025, after a few months of turmoil on that side, she was called into a meeting, and that was basically the end of her employment there. And she'd been there for quite a few years, built a great team, and we thought, wow, okay, she earns a lot more than me. Can we cover the bills? There was a kind of an initial shock there, but we realised, well, I can cover the bills, but that will be it. There'll be no sort of much more freedom beyond that. So that was kind of the start of the year on that bad foot. She realised she'd have to obviously network because she was a director. She'd have to network to get the job again. So she started along that path. So that's how the January started, really. And we thought, okay, we can deal with this. We've been through worse pretty much with things like COVID and stuff and things like that. So we're okay. Then my mother-in-law had a stroke. She went to hospital, leaving my father-in-law, who's completely incapable of fending for himself. So she had to spend certainly a lot of time going backwards and forwards back to Surrey to sort things out there. Eventually that kind of calmed down and things got back to normal with that. Almost immediately, one of our dogs became quite ill. We do have two pugs, one called Peter and one called Edward. Edward was a girl, just to reiterate that. So Peter was just over 14 and a half years old, and he suddenly developed an eye ulcer. And I have to say, if I never see an eye debridement again the rest of my life, I'll be happy. Very upsetting. I still can get very upset about the whole thing now. And he never really made a recovery. I had to apply this medication 12 times a day for a couple of months. And he was very stoic. He never blinked once, literally never blinked once. And eventually there was no other option, so we had to put him down. That was very upsetting, obviously. Almost straight after this, my parents came to visit, and my dad announced that he'd been investing in this cryptocurrency. Which I sort of knew about, but he'd not really gone into it. And he'd lost about £20,000. After the initial kind of, what the hell are you doing question, I realized that he said the reason why he'd invested was on Facebook, and Keir Starmer had told him to. And it was like, you spend so many hours slagging this guy off, and the one time you listen to him is the one time I wanted you to ignore him.
Oh, bless him. Oh, no.
So that kind of ramped up. I mean, I was still working, obviously, at this point as well. So I had to then go through the ombudsman, chase down the banks. I took days off to speak to the bank and do the kind of formal investigation interviews. It was quite useful. I hadn't been a fraud investigator. All that training just came back again. And I was able to kind of do timelines for the ombudsman, which was, I think, was gratefully received. Then he had a car crash, which I then found out that he'd had this medication which wasn't working well for him. He's got lots of medical problems. He lowered his heart, his blood pressure so low, when he turned his head to sort of look over his shoulder, he just passed out. Now, he's only doing about 3 miles an hour, and he just crashed into a wall. So there wasn't much damage to the wall, but there was a lot of damage to the car. So I had to go and sort of sort that out with him. So you got to tell DVLA. So I was dealing with that with him as well. I'm going through that process. And then Edward, whose back legs were already on our way out, they went as well. And so we had to then manage that as well. I mean, I'd already been sleeping downstairs with the dogs because they weren't able to kind of go outside and certainly hold their ablutions in. So my life was already restricted in that respect. Before Edward died, my wife did actually get a job, 6 months unemployed. She left after a month because it was such a toxic workplace. So we sort of put on the back foot again. Then Edward had a problem as well. And we did manage to try and nurse her through, but in the end, we just thought, this is enough. And I think at that point, when we had to put her down, to be honest, if somebody said the world's going to end next week, we were gone, fine, we're out. We're done. We were absolutely done. We had nothing left in the tank at all. And really, that just then, we tried going on holiday to Pembrokeshire, and at the time the weather was beautiful. The moment we booked that holiday, gale force winds on the way. It was so strong that one of the side windows on the car broke. So that's to fix that as well. I mean, we're already struggling for money, really. So this was just, everything was adding up. And we were just like, when is this going to end? When is this honestly going to end? It was bad luck. Now, it got to December, and my wife had so many interviews. One of the interviews took 8 weeks to go through to the process to find out she'd been pipped at the post. So we'd been through a lot. And then finally, she managed to get a job with the company she'd been chasing since January. And we thought, thank God for that. We're back, we can go back to square one. We can have a year of reset in 2026. And then 2 days later, I was called into a meeting with HR, and I thought, you are kidding me. This is just quite frankly ridiculous. I mean, I wasn't even shocked because the rest of the year had been so falling. I thought, whatever you've got, I don't care anymore. I'm done. So we had the meeting, and I just said to my wife, yeah, I've been on notice. So I'm assuming I'm going to be made redundant because they wouldn't put me on redundant. The reasons why they're given, my role was being dispersed out to South Africa, so I've got no chance of finding a different role.
Yeah.
So okay. And that was it was a weird feeling because it wasn't quite disappointment or shock. I was more worried about the fact that I had all these projects that needed to get finished, and I knew I wouldn't be able to. And these are people I've been working with for 13 years, felt some responsibility to them, and they weren't going to get completed. So there was a lot on, and I just thought I just need to just be as professional as I can to right to the very bitter end, really.
I think the thing that keeps spinning around my head as you were telling me that tale is 2020 gets a lot of bad rap for the whole COVID thing. But that sounds like such an emotional roller coaster. Everything you guys have went through and the tribulations you had, and then to kind of get to the end of the year and your wife has got the new job, and then to suddenly have that rug pull, and it's like you thought you were going into the new year on a positive spin, but here you go. Here's 2025's final parting gift. So I mean, I can only imagine like the challenges that put on both of you. And in terms of the redundancy announcement itself, before that meeting went in, did you have any sense that something like that was going to be coming, or was it completely by surprise?
There was one of the guys actually was actually also on that meeting. He worked out. I set up a little WhatsApp group as soon as it was announced, and he said he'd worked it out into a prior team meeting because his job group had been moved elsewhere, and he thought, okay, so they're probably going to get rid of me unless I'm going to be shipped out somewhere. So I think he'd already twigged. I hadn't. There have been some weird challenges, difficult to get straight answers on things. And when I had got an answer, the answer thought, well, you're either not thinking about what I'm telling you, or you just totally dismiss me, or whatever. So there was, especially at the sort of director level, they were very reluctant to speak to people, I think, which made things difficult. So I had some inklings, but I didn't think it would be that like that. I mean, certainly I do remember one team meeting where somebody asked, are we expanding the team? And they said, no, we're not planning that. I thought, should have asked whether we're reducing the numbers. That would have pinned them down, but they might not have known then, of course, anyway. So it's one of those things. I didn't have an inkling, but there was certainly a sense of relief when I'd been told, because things have been so stressful for the last sort of 12 months with a job. It had actually offered me some sort of release of that sort of stress as well. But then it was replaced with, oh my God, I need to actually help these people out before I go, because there's going to be nothing there. They weren't going to replace me really like for like either.
That makes sense. When your redundancy kicked in and it impacted you and you left the business, those initial early days, do you think that your experience in 2025 affected your early stages of redundancy? Because again, I'm thinking very much about the theme of when redundancy lands on top of everything else. So I'm curious as to whether, you look back on those early days now and you kind of think, well, I reacted in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have if I hadn't been through all of the stuff in 2025. Or do you think your first steps were kind of what you'd have done anyway?
I think there's certainly a case where I certainly wouldn't have reacted without 2025. I think as bad as 2025 was, the one real positive thing it did, it built an unbelievable resilience and made me have to understand that I actually needed to really take charge of things. Actually, just thinking about actually the first few weeks of being made redundant, the day after I was actually put on notice, a company cold called me, and they just out of the blue. I'm not then to a LinkedIn account and put it on myself on notice or anything, and they just had a nice chat. So they wanted to meet somebody like me. Just happened to be my location was key to where they wanted somebody to drop in. Now I wasn't obviously the right person for that role, but the fact that they'd done that, I thought, well, do you know what? Maybe this is the best thing. Absolutely. This really is going to be the best bit. Obviously, I was still stressing about getting things finished off, but the fear wasn't there at all. There was no, oh, how am I going to pay the mortgage? I thought, no, I am going to do this. This is absolutely going to do this. And it did help, of course, to being there for 13 years. So my actual reward for that was enough for me not to really, really worry about it for a few months. So that was good. But the actions of 2025 made me realize that this was actually a really good opportunity, actually. We wanted to take our year back and actually make it something, and I could really, really make a difference to myself and my family by having this time to do this.
And what were the reactions of the people around you? Because obviously your nearest and dearest will have seen you kind of navigate, quite frankly, a hellish 2025. To hear your news, what kind of reactions of support did you have?
Well, from people I told at work who actually, I hate it when companies do this. When there's people leaving, they don't tell anybody, and you only find out when you try and email it. especially in the last few days, where even in the last team meeting, I was promised that they would announce it, and they didn't. So I just hijacked the end of the meeting and just said, right, this is happening. I thought, I'm just fed up with this. So they were all shocked. And I'd had, since there was other consultation going up through the company as well, due to all these changes. I think my wife was kind of, we were in that position of thinking, well, this happened. But I'd actually had heard about the job a few weeks before, saying how just awful it turned into. And that really, I should be doing something else. So in that respect, that fitted. Our friends and neighbours, I have to say, when we used to live in Surrey, we never went out at all. Because we've got such a close community here, and it's a very small village, we always go around each other's houses. They were incredibly supportive. I mean, there were, most of last year, I don't think I bought a drink at our community centre bar. People just buying them for us. I mean, it was that nice. They were just really taking care of us as well. So that was a huge amount of support. Some of the locals as well. I mean, they work in all sorts of strange places. The chap who works in China, he was very supportive and gave lots of good advice about how to sort of navigate and things to do as well, which I'd not really thought of. So the support side was very important. You've got to have that, I think.
Thinking again about those early weeks of, you'd left your previous role, you'd started the new emotional roller coaster of navigating redundancy. What kind of approaches did you take, or what kind of systems did you put in place?
I realised that this was going to be all down to me. So I had a nice Christmas, and then I didn't do anything until about the 4th of January. I thought the first thing I do is actually sort my workplace out. So I thought I'm just going to just do everything differently that I would do normally. I'm going to treat this completely differently. It's not going to be like because if you're working and trying to apply for a job, you just kind of do it on the side in the evenings. No, this is going to be my job. This is going to be a totally professional approach to the whole thing. So the first thing I did was I changed my desk, my workplace. I made sure that was a comfortable and focused area. After that, I just built a spreadsheet of everything from contacts that I used to work with, companies I used to work with as well, and listed organisations, which is what my neighbour said, join any professional organisations, because it looks good anyway on a CV. And really list companies that I liked, and with their ethics or a product, and find out what I wanted to do. So I listed my skills, but also what I wanted to actually do and what I wanted to get out of work. So it's a really good opportunity here to not just restructure how I work or who I work for, but also restructure me and actually get rid of. I don't need to think about what things I've left at a previous company. They're gone. I can actually just focus going forward totally. So I listed everything from the usual interview question of tell us the time when. Thought, right, I'm going to list all of them. I should cover also an encyclopedia of information there. I spent a week building my CV and profile online. There's a couple of recruiters I spoke to who gave me a lot of good advice, because the last time I got a job like this, I just went to a recruitment company and go find me a job, and they did. That's now changed. That does not exist anymore. The recruitment companies, you have to go and seek them out and actually apply for the jobs yourself and promote yourself. And I realised very quickly, you're not just the recruiter, you're your own manager, you're the product, you're your employee. You have to manage yourself in a completely professional way to do this. Once I got that out of the way, I created a file on my computer with the CVs, cover letters, what I call the job application factory. I could dip into when I want to, make slight adjustments, but it was all there. I didn't have to start faffing around with that when I got an application with a short deadline. Now, as far as searching for jobs goes, that was a interesting one because, again, not done it before. I found out that certain keywords mean lots of different things. So if you put data analyst into a job search, you're going to get all sorts. So I thought, okay, I need to really start honing this. So the first week or so, I was just putting test applications out because I didn't really know what I was going to get back. And I had a few chats. I had a chat actually with one of the people I used to work with, and they said they might have an opportunity, which in the end it wasn't suitable. But it's having those conversations, and just so you're speaking about the subject matter you're looking to work into, all helps, because it just clarifies things in your mind. You're getting that sort of feedback and those questions back at you, which will help you with further interviews. So it's just keeping that mindset going, which you can drop into at any point, helps enormously.
And did you find that the types of roles you were applying for changed as your journey went on, or were you applying for similar types of roles at the start as you did as you progressed?
Yeah, I was able to almost grade the applications. So some were really, really good fit, which I kind of concentrated on. Others were okay, but I just applied for them and forgot them. I'd never tried to attach myself emotionally to any application until they replied with something positive. I think you could go quite mad if you did one application a week and just waited for it. I don't think you'd get very far. In the end, I applied for 184 jobs over 6 months. But there's different grades within there. Out of those 180 odd, I'd say there's probably about maybe 10 that I really, really wanted to get for. The rest were all kind of just tests and prods and see what feedback I get back. And also, if you apply for lots of roles, you get to see the platforms that companies use. And very quickly, you can see they use that platform. I don't want to work for them, unfortunately. And you can actually make those decisions quite early on that you don't want to do that. So that was really quite good. But yeah, it's I don't think the job's changed that much. I think I was just better at refining my applications.
And I know that in my own experience, it's been a case of I definitely honed the types of roles that I've been applying for. But I also, with my own spreadsheet, because I took a very similar approach to you, my own spreadsheet, I ended up only ever tracking the ones that I cared about, because it got to the point where I initially started, I was like, I like a bit of data myself, and I'm just like, I'm going to track everything. It's, down to the file name of the CV that I've used for that reference, because in one of my early discussions, they said, we had a few questions on your CV, and I'm like, flip, which CV did I send them? So I was just like, I need to always make sure that I have linked back to the CV.
Indeed,
but then latterly, it's been a case of the roles that I truly, truly cared about. So, you mentioned the number of 10 that you really were passionate about. Those are the ones that I tracked, so that I knew that was, if that conversation came about, I could be completely on top of it. And any other conversations that cropped up, it would just be, handled as is. So it'd be good to kind of hear what's kept you going on harder days. Because again, thinking about your experience and kind of navigating this journey, what kind of things helped keep motivating you?
One of the things, the tabs on my spreadsheet I actually added was a tab called drivers. And they were just reminders of why I'm doing this. Obviously, I want to have a roof over my head, neat. That's one of the big ones, but I didn't think I need to note that one down. But there was things like, well, we've lost both the dogs. We want another dog. But, I'm not going to go out and get a dog, because that would be, a couple of grand's worth of bills and everything else. So it was, and there's things like, some of it is very materialistic. Like my car also blew up. That was another one.
Literally or figuratively?
Literally. I came back. I got to where I was going. The warning light came on. I thought, oh, good. So I thought, I'm just going home again. Got home, steam coming out of it, and I could see underneath water and oil and whatever else pouring out the bottom.
Can I just clarify, was this 2025 still?
This was actually 2026, but my car, I had a previous car, which I'd had for about 15 years. I should have just kept it, really, because it was still working. I just couldn't lock it. And there's nothing wrong. I couldn't tell how much fuel was in it as well. So it was on its last legs, and I just thought, oh, I'll just change it, and that was the worst thing I could have done, really. But there's things like that. I mean, one of the things I actually changed was my laptop, because I've got an old Windows 10 laptop. I've had it for about 10 years. It was fine, but if I want to start it, I have to start it 5 minutes before I would do anything on it. And my wife had changed hers when she was redundant. Said, you know, it did actually change things. It makes it a lot better. But it's 400 quid. Let's just do it. So I bought a new laptop, and that made a huge difference to everything. Made a lot of things a lot more efficient. And it was just really accumulating those kind of ideals and things that I wanted. So I can't do that unless I work, which is very basic, but it helped. I mean, there were other things. I had also a list of things to do around the house. And we recently got some chickens. We got them in February this year. And a friend gave us an old chicken coop, so I've been refurbishing that. So it's little jobs like that, just because you can't job seek all day. You grow crazy. So I had to fill my time. Doing things like that. But that won't fill all your mental space. And there were towards the end, I was losing quite a lot of motivation towards the end. It was very difficult to keep focused because I'd been so close on a number of occasions with interviews coming second. I had to thought, what am I going to have to do here to get this job? I've got to get a job. And I did have a backup plan, which was 10 months. I'd just pick a local job and just stick at it and job search in the evenings or something. It was difficult. It was very difficult. I was getting quite low. I did try and break up our days. I mean, I wife invited me off onto a work trip to one of her sites. She's sort of doing facilities. That was a nice day out, and that was to do a photography project, which I'm quite good at photography. And that was worthwhile doing anyway. That got used as a promotional campaign. But it is very difficult. It's very difficult to keep that level of concentration, momentum there. Actually, one of the things that did help me, which would surprise people, is the DWP. They don't get any good press. Certainly my experiences back in the 80s and 90s going there was kind of, there's no hope for you kind of things. But they were very, very pleasant and very positive. I think it possibly helped me and them that I was approaching the whole thing very positively. And they were always good to kind of support me. Certainly when I was going for interviews with the civil service, as soon as I mentioned that, there was a step change in their behaviour with me as well. I mean, they were very pleasant before, but after, they were even more supportive and gave me a lot of good advice as well. And I think they're good resource people who really are starting off with nothing and don't know. They are very good. So I would have a big positive tick for them.
I know that I've had very, very similar experiences, kind of like the in approaching them with that positive mindset, as you say. Kind of the interaction has been really good. And I think I initially was a bit worried about the stigma attached to it. And then I had to have a conversation to, get over myself, and they've been amazing. I think you've indicated as well, kind of it just helps kind of lift a bit of the weight off your shoulders in terms of having to go through it all. And Dan, we've not addressed this specifically so far, but your redundancy journey is essentially at an end, as far as I understand so far. So you were successful in securing a role. How did that part feel? Because you navigated the journey for a while. When that landed and when that news came through, how did you go about processing it?
At the time, I was quite low about the whole process. Actually, just to step back from there, the being redundant did allow me to focus on some of the things that cropped up as well. I mean, one of the things was my father-in-law, I mentioned earlier. We actually managed to get him into a home finally, because he was just incapable of looking after himself. Had I not been redundant, I might not have been helped out as much as I possibly could, doing all the legal packs and sorting those papers out. So there were some kind of positive distractions, which wouldn't appear to be positive, but they absolutely were, because it might mean I could focus on something else, but still have that aim of professionalism about it as well, which was very good. So where the actual opportunity came in, I mean, the opportunity actually started back in April, actually, when I was contacted by an old friend and just said, my boss is looking for somebody like you. Give him a nudge. So I did. And eventually I got a meeting with him. And that went fine. Didn't hear anything else. And that was when my mood was kind of dropping, thinking that was a really good opportunity and for nothing, which the way things have been going means that's it. It's gone. The opportunity's gone. For some reason, I just thought, do you know what? I'm just going to give everybody one big last nudge of everything and just sort of lay it out, saying, look, is there this opportunity or not? And I got the interview. I thought, okay, it's all right. I've got something, and that was in 2 weeks. So I just carried on what I was doing the jobs and so on. And after the interview, which I thought went fine, I asked, it's going to take 2 weeks to get back to you. I thought, okay, another 2 weeks, fine, it's normal. But 2 days later, they came back to me with an offer. I was just, oh.
That's great.
Just wasn't expecting it. But I say the community around here are always very interested about what I was doing. And I mentioned that, so this is it. I can't, there was nothing negative about it. There's no questions I couldn't answer. I had no bad vibes at all. And that was just, it was amazing. And after that, I thought, oh, crikey, I need to actually prepare for this. I'm actually going back to a place of work again. So I've done all these projects I'd started. I need to sit and finish because I'm not going to be able to do these anymore. So there was a sudden panic of trying to finish things off. I mean, there were just ridiculous things like I'd volunteered for the vineyard up the road to knock posts in, these big steel posts. I thought, oh, I'm running out of time. I mean, we've run out of time now, but because the weather hasn't helped at all, it's been too hot to do that. So it was just, sense of panic. I thought I just need to go running around, need to buy some. I haven't bought clothes for 2 years because of what's been going on. So I thought I need to get new clothes in. So there was a bit of panic, but the one thing I still find this strange. I've not had a single moment where I thought I can't do this job.
That's good.
It's never. It's not even crossed my mind. The only things I've had is how do I store my files on their system, kind of thing. It's just really administrative stuff. I've not had a moment where I thought I definitely can't do this, or I'm out of my depth or anything like that. It's nothing. It's really unusual because it usually happens every day of my working life.
Brilliant. Oh, it's great, Dan. It's such fantastic news, and I think kind of looking back at your redundancy experience overall, is there anything about that journey that you would approach differently if it happened again?
I think I was very lucky in that my wife had been through it, so I could learn a lot from her. So the way she planned it out and she was speaking to people meant that I thought, okay, if I follow that role model, at least then I've got a sort of a basic kind of schedule and plan and structure for it. I don't know if I'd actually do anything vastly different. I mean, I tried using AI on a couple of occasions, and I just thought it's not working. That is it. I used it on the CV builds and stole the structure, but not the wording, because the wording was inventing things that I'd never done before. So it's not really. I'm not going to go through all this.
Saved people from fires and, part-time ninja.
it was coming up with almost something like, I enjoy third-party equality. But what does that mean?
That's good. I think we all do.
I thought, this is just nonsense. So I thought, no, I'm going to do this on my own terms, really. This is my redundancy. I'm going to do this my way. I don't know. I don't think I'd actually do anything different, simply because I realised that it was all down to me. Maybe I could do some different CVs. I mean, I did change the CV towards the very end. I just cancelled all my job feeds, redid the CV, made it shorter and more brief, and then redid the job feeds. Possibly do it more regularly, because you do quite a habit of just looking at the same feeds all the time and not looking beyond that. You can miss stuff. So I made that a bit more efficient. But I wouldn't change anything really. I didn't refuse any kind of social engagements. I mean, Lisa, who we probably both know, she invited me for an online coffee chat. Okay, it's a stranger, know who she is, but refuse it. You don't know what's going to happen. It could spark something in your brain thinking, that's a good idea. You don't know.
So thinking about your learnings, and again, the audience of the podcast are folk who may be early doors navigating redundancy. What do you think would be the key thing you'd suggest to someone who's maybe day one of their own redundancy thing? What kind of advice or suggestions would you give them to set them off on the right path?
Structure, complete structure. And that's just not just like listing your CVs and your cover letters and so on. It's the whole thing. It's your whole day. And you've got to approach it like this is your job. This is what you do for a living. You're looking for a job. That's it. And it's important that you actually stick to it as well, because it is it's a rock that you're going to lean on, and certainly it's something you're going to hang on to when things are going wrong. You're going to need it. What you put into that structure, I would say that depends on your own life. People have different situations, but absolutely build that structure. And also, it is your own time. No one else is putting you under pressure, just you. And I know bills need to be paid and so on, but it is still your own time. It's still you who are actually in charge of yourself. And it's important to actually take that time out away from it, to actually have that freedom to just clear your head, go out for a walk. And there were times when I went off for other jollies. I mean, my wife went off for a work trip to York. And I said, well, I'll drive you. I've got nothing else on. I've got no interviews coming. I can still job hunt on my phone if I need to on my laptop. So I had a day off in York, never been there before. And again, came back totally refreshed, refocused on everything. And it's just taking those little bits of time out just to help you refocus. And but you always come back to your structure every single time. Your plan, your structure, and just keep to it.
Brilliant. Dan, thank you so much. It's been absolutely amazing to talk to you. Before we close, I generally ask a question, and the same question to everyone I get to speak to on the show. Do you have a least favorite interview question? And if so, what is it?
It's not a specific question. It's when people ask me very technical questions in interviews. And that's not because I don't know the answer. It's because trying to explain something very technical, it depends what their experience is of how technical you want to go. So you can make your answer too technical, and it just goes over the top of their head, and you've lost the interview possibly because they didn't want that.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult to manage that one. Luckily, I stayed away from kind of those questions. I steered them elsewhere, but that's the one I don't like. What actually, just going back to advice, one of the things I did do, I went on one of the jobs I went for, because there were so many applicants, they did a Teams meeting with everybody. All the applicants were invited. Oh, brilliant idea. And they could explain the job, but also people could ask questions.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, after about 10 minutes, the job's really not for me, but I'm going to stick with it because it might be some quite interesting things. And the questions the other applicants were asking were brilliant. So I stole them. I thought, these are really good questions. I used them in other interviews, which really put the employees on the spot as well. And with some of the really simple questions, like what's the most challenging aspect of data you have in your company right now? And it really put them back onto into their box a little bit, thinking, okay, we've got to talk about our company now, not just you. It was really good. I thought that was actually quite a good thing. If you do get the opportunity to do that, take it. Just even if the job's not for you, do these online seminars and webinars and things. They can be really valuable.
Brilliant. Dan, thank you so much for your time. It's lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure speaking to you.
Hi there, I'm Nick, and when you're not listening to the weekly wisdom from Stevie and in breaking down the strange things happening in your head while navigating redundancy, please check out my fortnightly podcast, Starting Over. Every other week we explore the stories of incredible individuals through 10 key questions. We dive into the challenges of a career setback or break, personal growth in this time and lessons learned along the way, practical tips to help others facing similar situations, and ultimately a chance to showcase the person behind the CV. Join me as we listen to these journeys and remember collectively that career setbacks and breaks are not the end, but the start of your next chapter. Find Starting Over on wherever you get your podcasts from. But for now, back to Stevie and take care.
So the conversation with Dan was really, really good. It's amazing the journey that he's been on. And the thing I kept coming back to was the juggling piece at the start and the knife. Because I kept coming back to that thought and listening to the conversation again. Because Dan's whole year in 2025 and his redundancy journey after that is basically a demonstration of what happens when you get handed several of them in a row with barely enough time in between each one to work out how you're holding the last. So there's a handful of things that Dan touched upon that I wanted to properly go through because I don't think they're specific to Dan. I think they're useful for anyone currently midair with their own version of this. And the first one is about structure. And it's not necessarily the version you'd expect. So Dan talked through the fact he didn't just write a list and call it a plan. He started off by changing his actual desk. He treated the search like a real job with real hours and decided early on that this was going to run completely differently from how you job hunt on the side of a role that you're still doing. And that distinction is really important because a search that you're squeezing into evenings, it just feels like admin that you're behind on. When you're looking for a job that you're properly representing yourself for, first thing at a desk that's been set up for you, it feels like something you're actually steering. Secondly, and this one surprised me a little bit, Dan applied for 184 jobs, but he only let himself get emotionally invested in about 10 of them. Everything else was logged, it was graded, but it was left alone until it needed his attention again. So, if you're the type of person who reads every job description twice and starts rehearsing the interview before you've even applied, this one's worth considering. Not everything that lands in your inbox deserves that much of you. Thirdly, other people around him carried a fair amount for him, and he let them. A village that kept buying him drinks all year without being asked. And by the way, I am looking up the address for that because, I need to move there. A neighbor with genuinely good advice about professional bodies. Even the slightly odd out of nowhere offers, a stranger inviting him for coffee chats he had no reason to say yes to. He took the meeting anyway. You don't always get to know in advance which one of those is going to matter most to you. And fourth, he actually built in time away from the whole thing and treated it as maintenance rather than a reward for good behavior. The day trip to York he mentioned wasn't something he'd earned. He came back from it sharper though, not because a break was owed to him, but because stepping away and coming back is just simply how most people's focus actually works. And fifth and finally, Dan didn't say this one out loud, not once, but it ran underneath everything he described. He didn't punish himself on the days it wasn't working. There was a backup plan sitting quietly in the background the entire time, which meant no single bad week had to carry the full weight of the outcome. And that's a different thing from coasting. It's knowing where your energy actually needs to go on a given day and not spending what's left of it scoring yourself for the days it doesn't quite land. So what's the takeaway? If you take away just one thing from today, let it be this. You don't need to catch the knife perfectly. You just need somewhere for it to sit for a while you work out how to hold it properly. A structure steady enough that when something lands on top of everything else, you've got a place to put it down instead of just adding it to the pile that you're already carrying. And I do appreciate that I'm talking about carrying and juggling and knives, and the metaphor it's got so mixed now, it's just crazy, but you get the idea. Thank you so much, Dan, for being so generous and sharing your story today. Dan also shared his story over on the Invisible Queue. So if any part of this landed for you and you want to talk it through with people in exactly the same spot, that's where to find them. And speaking of which, If this episode was useful, a rating or review helps more than you'd think. And the invisible Q is there whenever you need somewhere to put your own knife down for a minute. And if you're asking yourself, now what? You're in the right place. Before you go, if any of this has been useful, please do me a favour and follow the show wherever you're listening. And if you've got 60 seconds and an opinion, leave a review. It helps other people find the show, and it also stops me wondering if I'm turning into some sort of audio hermit. And if you want more than just my voice turning up in your ears once a week, head to theinvisibleq.com. It's a support platform for people navigating redundancy, built by people who've actually been through it and remember how strange and exhausting the whole thing is. But for now, thank you for listening. Until next time.